ASHENED is a bad deck. That's the end of the video. Of course, I'm only joking, guys, but come on, there's been a lot of talk about the previous, well, before Mimigul, the TCG exclusive archetypes coming out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Have been less than what anyone would want, and unfortunately, I think ASHENED is an unfortunate side effect of the fact that this was a TCG exclusive archetype released when Snake Eye was at its full dominance, and, well, obviously ASHENED is very heavily involved with dealing with pyro monsters, and you'd think it would do its job pretty well, but unfortunately there's so many things that this deck has to do in order to even get things going, which makes it really underwhelming. It's not saying that this deck can't do anything. It has some powerful monsters and some really cool interactions. Not to mention it being a very good deck to use Super Poly. Like, you always main deck that card in this. But let me just talk to you about some of the cards and as to some of the reasons why I don't think things were going so well at all. So let's just start with the main deck. So obviously you want to be playing, well, 3 copies of Vados. This card has not really seen a decrease in price, and that's another thing why people have been put off of this deck, is because, well, why play a Pyro deck like Ashened when there's Snake Eye out there? You know, why go for the worst possible option? Vados is here. He is a level 9 Pyro. He's basically like a hand trap, so you can pop a field card as a quick effect during either player's turn on either field to special summon him to the opponent's field, and you can take an Ashened continuous trap and either add it to your hand or set it. We'll talk about the continuous traps in a little bit. He's a really big body. If he's sent to the graveyard from the opponent's field as well, he has an effect that is Dark Hole. So that's one of the main things. You can sort of chain it together, remove your opponent's cards. So it's a really powerful card in and of itself, but what it's working with isn't what you like to really see. We've got 3 copies of Priestess. This is the rotor, so all of the smaller Ashened monsters in the deck have the effect, well, have the condition, so if Obsidian the Ashen Cities face up in either field zone, you can special summon it from your hand. A lot of the monsters carry this, I think all of them do, and Priestess is the rotor, so she can search any Ashen card. Obviously you're going to want to be playing 3. And then 1 each of Hero, King and Shaman. Hero is a quick effect pop of a Pyro monster, and if you destroy Vados with its effect, you can place Obsidian from your deck face up in your field zone. It is a big body, 2600. Again, also an extender with Obsidian up. And yeah, it's a quick effect to target a Pyro on the field and destroy it. It's useful if, say, you're going for your combo and you've got Hero out and they try and imperm one of your Pyros when you're trying to do an effect. You can just chain this to remove it so that your Priestess or your King resolves, which is, you know, pretty useful. Shaman is pretty good recursion, so she's also an extender, and you can target 3 Pyro monsters in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and if you spin back an Ashened, you can add Obsidian the Ashen City from your deck to your hand. This card, it's a good way of searching, but most of the time, especially in your first turn when you want to see the field spell, you always want to see the field spell in this deck. It's you don't see the field spell, you're kind of in trouble unless you see Kashtira cards. So having you have to recycle 3 Pyros in grave in order to just get access to the field spell is just horrible. What Ashened would really like in a situation like this would be to have a card like Fire King Sanctuary, like a continuous card that lets you place your field spell and then have an additional effect on the field. That would be amazing. And it's sort of a case of having to wait for the OCG and see if they do stuff, because at the moment in time, with Double Wild coming out, Tistina is, well, it's actually got plays. It can set up a board that books your opponent's field, sends all of their other face-up cards onto the field, and it's pretty consistent in what it does as well. So this deck is just lagging behind. Not to mention, Bonfire is probably going to get hit on the ban list soon, which will just hit this deck's consistency down to nothing, which is just really depressing, because if you haven't been able to tell already, this is a deck that's actually quite close to my heart. I really like it. Its artwork is and theme is very reminiscent on a game series I love called Dark Souls, and the artwork is just so awesome, and it infuriates me as to why this deck was so hindered power-wise. It does anger me, but we'll keep talking. Obsidian, the Ashen City, the heart and soul of the deck, basically. So face-up special summon monsters your opponent controls become pyro during your turn only, meaning if they've got any special summon monsters out, you drop this, they all turn into pyros, you can super poly them away for your Ashened fusion monsters. And during the end phase, you can target another copy of Obsidian that's in your graveyard, bottom deck it, and draw a card, similar to how the Albion sort of effect works. Free Extinguishing. This is actually a really good card. So you can mill any Pyro Dark monster from your deck, then you can add a level 5 or higher Pyro monster from your graveyard to your hand. So you can dump Vados and then add it, and it plays around draw, because you're rarely directly adding cards from your deck to your hand, and once you've already added the Vados off of something like Awakening, you're not really searching much other than what you get with like Priestess. Obviously the Kashtira cards in this, they're powerful, but they make you a bit more susceptible to droll, so you just need to be a bit careful. It also has an additional effect, you can banish it from the graveyard to polymerization. So there are situations where you can hard summon Vados, the big fusion Vados, but a lot of the time you're using it to make Embers, recycling a field spell, and just making sure you have some form of setup. Awakening. Here is a quick play spell. It's probably the best single card in the deck, because this one card gets you like everything the deck wants to do. So you can place an Obsidian from your deck in either field zone. If you place it in your opponent's field zone, you get to search a level 5 or higher Dark Pyro from deck to hand. However, the rest of the turn, after it resolves, you are locked into Pyros from the extra deck, and the same goes with Extinguishing. So yeah, just make sure if you're going into any non-Pyro monsters from the extra deck that you do that first before using this card. Yeah. But again, yeah, really good. It would be amazing to have a way to actually search this, because the deck has no way of getting to this. If the deck had a way of getting to this, then it would at least be playable to an extent where if they hit a card like Bonfire on a future Forbidden Limited list, this being able to access this would sort of mitigate that in a way that would make me not considerably depressed. As for the trap cards to round up the Ashened engine, I'm going for 2 Endlessness and 1 Eternity. People around that suffer enough to play this deck have either traded 1 Endlessness for an extra Eternity, or kept it with 2, or just gone 1-on-1. I like 2 Endlessness because of its graveyard effect. You can banish it and another from your grave to turn your opponent's board into Pyros, again making you able to fuse away with the other copy on your field. So on the field it's sort of like Super Poly, so you can fusion summon a Pyro fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as material, but you have to use Vados, the main deck Vados, in order to actually use this card. So if Vados isn't on the field, this card is essentially dead. And your opponent can remove Vados from their field really easily with cards like Forbidden Droplet, or when we're speaking of Snake Eyes, they could literally just send away the card to summon their Flamberge, and they'll just be able to recur their level 1s from the grave, and it's just so poorly done, which, again, it's very saddening. But if you do successfully fusion summon, the monster you fuse gains 500 attack for every material, which is quite nice. The graveyard effect somewhat makes up for its slacking, but again, you have to play this because it's the only real way you're disrupting your opponent and blowing up their board with stuff on their turn. You just have to try and amass as much resources as possible so you don't get completely blown out by everything. And now we've got the supplemental engine because the Kashtira cards are good. Fenrir, self-explanatory. You can search Rise Heart with it, which is a level 4 extender, which lets you go into like Banshee, and then Banshee can get your extra summons, as well as, you know, Plan B, Baguska, etc. Really good removal effect. everyone knows about Fenrir. It's pretty good card. 3 Unicorn, another big body. You search his Birth, which is good disruption. And then 1 Rise Heart summons itself from the hand, level 4 Fire, which comes up because you've got Promethean Princess. You can sort of use that card, although it's not way near as you got as much utility, but you know. To round off the cash engine, we've got 3 Wraith Oath to search them, and the 1 Birth. More consistency cards, play it while it's still at 3, I guess. 3 Bonfire. Another reason, obviously, I might have gone over this again, but Bonfire was at its most expensive when ASHENED came out. It literally was released to, like, as soon as we knew we were getting Bonfire, or had Bonfire from Maze of Millennia, and the card was like a £60 card at the time, and for a deck like ASHENED, it's like, on its first wave of support, why are you forking out like 200 on a set of this when you could be playing it in something better? But you play it now because you can. Set rotation, field spells can be disrupted for your opponent in certain ways. Terraforming, 3 Super Poly, you turn your opponent's monsters into pyros and then you can break their boards with it. And then I've gone with 3 Cosmic Cyclone. So you can even use this as a tool card. So like if you're really low on resources, you can pay 1,000 to banish your own Obsidian from the field zone to special summon an ASHENED from the deck. I don't recommend doing that, but sometimes you have to. Now onto the extra deck. 2 Endless Darkness. So, can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects. So it can't be targeted by monster effects specifically, and can't be destroyed by card effects. If it's fusion summoned, it's Harpy's Feather Duster. And if your opponent activates a card or effect on the field, as a quick effect, you can send a face-up ASHENED card you control to the graveyard to destroy it. So it's Ghost Ogre. On the surface, this seems like a really, really strong card, but unfortunately, it's not got as much protection as you'd like. And its removal effect is a bit too costly when most of the time you want to keep some ASHENED cards on the field, especially the field spell. Maybe not so much ASHENED to Endlessness, but there we go. This is probably my favourite artwork out of all of the ASHENED cards. It just looks so cool. And it kind of annoys me that it's getting a playmat that you can only get as a judge at YCS Bologna, but we move. If you manage to spit multiple copies of this guy out, you are in quite a good position because he's not that easy to remove, but, you know, you can just deal with it with, like, Droplet or any spell or trap, so, you know. Loses to Dimension Prison, which is very funny. 2 copies of Embers. If it's fusioned, you can target a field spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. And at the start of the damage step, if it battles an opponent's pyro, you can destroy it, and it can make a second attack in a row. So this is pretty good going second. I'd like it to have done like more consistency related stuff, like maybe add a certain ASHENED card on summon, but we can't have nice things. Other things to note is that this requires 2 pyros, and the Vados requires specifically Vados and 2 or more level 9 or lower pyros. So essentially, if your opponent or there's a Vados on either side of the board, you can kind of in some situations super poly away an entire board with this card, which is great. But does it happen often? No, it does not. So yeah. So more super poly targets. We've got Garura and Mud Dragon, and also Dragos Stapelia. Now for some Link monsters. So from Link 2s, we've got Nightmare Phoenix. It's good because it's a fire. We've got IP. We've got SP, which is also pretty good. You can banish, again, like your field spell with it, and like Banshee from the graveyard. If you've got Pyro, that card can summon itself back out. And SP is really just is an amazing card. Please don't ban this, Konami. I need to be able to dodge my opponent's removal. 1 Promethean Princess. 1 Dark. You steal your opponent's monsters. You can link up into this. 1 Dweller. 1 Plan B. 1 Banshee. This searches your entire deck or sends it from deck to graveyard. And it's like a mini extender that works in conjunction with your SP. But yeah, so hopes for the future. So we might be getting reveals for Alliance Insight in the future, in the nearish future. So what could they possibly do to improve this deck? So as I said previously in the video, they could give them more of an easy way to search Awakening of Vados, which would be really good. They could get another sort of boss monster to coincide with Endless Darkness, so a way to maybe make this even harder to out for the opponent. You know, a card that just summons more consistency, especially if Bonfire gets hit. Main deck monsters that sort of work more like Kashtiras, because I would have thought that they would have given the main deck monsters some like quick effects, because at the moment Hero is a good indicator of the fact that they could be like, okay, we could give them another main deck monster that a la like Fenrir, that it could banish a card as a quick effect, or like set a card from your deck as a quick effect, which is really cool. There's so much that they could do, but they probably won't be getting more than 2 support cards. And do I think the deck would become good with just 2 support cards? I mean, it worked for Spiral back in 2017, so who's to say it can't? Anyway, that's me rambling on. I love the deck in its concept and how it looks and the general vibe of it, but it's got a long way to go before you can be taking down any regionals with this deck. Yeah, but thanks for listening, guys. I know this one dragged on a bit, but cheers, and I'll see you later.